The desk is answering well, so Priya's team builds a dashboard on top of it. Category, urgency, one line of summary per ticket. Daniel does it properly. He asks for a schema, the mechanism this course has recommended twice, and most tickets render perfectly. Then one panel comes up empty. The answer that fed it starts correctly and simply stops halfway through the second field with nothing closing it off. And here is the part that makes this hard. Nothing failed. The call came back clean. The app can't parse half a structure, so it throws, and the code does the thing every code base does. It catches the failure and tries again. It works most days and fails often enough that nobody trusts the panel, and every failure quietly costs another call. The bill lands on Daniel at the end of the week. Freeze. Because Daniel's first question is the one this whole episode answers. Is this the model's fault or ours? Here is how the exam asks it. An integration intermittently receives responses it can't parse, and the team must be able to tell whether the model or the integration is at fault. What should the developer do? The item parks in the corner, and by the end you will be able to point at the exact place that broke every time. Call it 3 more of your 53, and it's the episode that makes the difference between a developer who guesses and one who can prove it. Here is the whole episode in one picture, and it's the trip one ticket makes. Your code sends a request, Claude answers, your parser reads it, the dashboard draws it. A failure can only sit in 3 places along that line. It never ran, it ran and stopped early, or it finished normally and the body still wasn't something you could use. 2 of those 3 leave a mark on the response you can read. The third leaves nothing at all, which is exactly why it's the one that bites you. Start at the third place, because it's where Daniel was standing and he did the recommended thing. When something downstream needs fields, you ask for a schema. Structured output constrains the response to the shape you supply, so the shape stops being something you hope for and becomes something the request constrains. That's still right. The question this episode answers is why it wasn't enough. The exam expects you to know it comes in 2 flavors that do the same job in different places. One constrains the response body, which is what the dashboard reads, and it's the output config format field printed on screen there. The other constrains what the model puts into a tool call, which matters the moment tools arrive in a couple of episodes. Now the part that complicates what this course told you twice already, and I'd rather complicate it than leave you overconfident. The documentation doesn't say the schema is always honored. It says compliance is guaranteed in most cases, and then it lists the exceptions. The model can refuse outright and you get a refusal instead of your fields. The answer can be cut off before the structure closes, either at the ceiling you set, or because the window itself filled and the ceiling is episode 2's trick in a new place. And when you pin a field to a fixed list of allowed values, which a schema calls an enum, one can come back in different casing than you wrote and break a strict comparison. So the habit the exam rewards is unromantic. Constrain the output and validate it anyway before you trust it. And keep 2 questions apart because they get different answers. On the exam, a schema is still the right answer when a stem asks how to guarantee a shape. This is about what your code does after the answer arrives, and there the schema makes the bad case rare without making your parser optional. Stay in the third place because there's a second way the body breaks you, and this one has nothing to do with the model at all. A structure sent in pieces arrives as fragments of text, and a fragment on its own isn't something you can parse. The place you'll actually hit this is a streamed tool call, a couple of episodes from now where the tool's input arrives exactly this way. So you collect the fragments, print it there as input JSON delta until the block stops and parse once at the end because only the finished value is a real object. Try to parse each piece as it lands and you'll get errors that look like the model producing broken data when it's your reader being impatient. And carry the attitude from the last 2 episodes into this one. Fluent output is not verified output, and a successful call is not a correct answer. Now the heart of the episode, and it's the picture doing the work, the same 3 places, each with the mark it leaves behind. The exam has two words for the ends of that line: integration layer and model layer, and for two of the three places the response says outright which one you're in. If the request itself failed, you get an error, and that means the call didn't complete. Bad request, no permission, too many requests, their side overloaded. That's the integration layer. Something about how you called, when you called, or what was happening on their side. If the request succeeded, you get a response, and it carries a field on screen called the stop reason, which says why the model stopped writing. That's the model layer. The call worked, and this tells you what happened inside it. It finished naturally, it hit the ceiling you set, or it stopped for a reason you need to read. Which solves the cold open. The call succeeded, so the dashboard's failure was never an error at all, and no amount of retrying was going to help. Read the reason it stopped, and it says max tokens, the ceiling doing exactly what you told it to, which is one of those escape hatches, a successful call with an incomplete body, which also tells Daniel what to actually do about it, and it was never the retry, raise the ceiling, or ask for a shorter answer. And the third place is the one with no signal at all. The call worked, the model finished naturally, which the field spells and turn, and the body still isn't what your parser wants. That one is yours, and validation is the only thing that finds it. When you are standing in the first place, the shape is predictable, which is a gift for debugging. Every error the API returns comes back with a type your code can branch on, a message for a human, and an identifier for that specific request. That last one is called the request ID. It's the detail people forget and the exam likes, so log it every time. It's how anyone else can find your exact request later, and without it a bug report is just a story. 2. You already met in episode 3, too many requests from you and their side being overloaded, which look similar and mean different things. The client libraries already retry the transient ones with weights that grow between attempts, which is what backing off means. So a retry you write yourself is usually duplicating theirs, and retrying a genuinely bad request just spends money more efficiently. Back to Daniel's question at full size, and now you're armed. Option 1. Add a retry around the parse so intermittent failures resolve themselves. Option 2. Validate every response against the schema and branch on why the model stopped, logging the request ID for that call. Option 3. Move to a larger model so the responses are better formed. Option 4. Check the HTTP status on every call, since a successful status means the response is usable. Name the decision first. This is, will it survive production? Because it's about operating the thing, not about phrasing. The stem says must, so rule 2 fires, and rule 2 says a must needs a mechanism that produces the guarantee rather than advice that hopes for it, which means the answer has to produce evidence. Fewer symptoms isn't the same thing. The retry dies twice. It's the corpse from the cold open, where retrying the same call changed nothing but the bill. And it fails the constraint outright, because a retry hides which layer broke instead of telling you. The bigger model dies on rule 1. Generic upgrade, no named mechanism, and better formed is not the same as knowing who's at fault. And the status code option dies the third way. An option can die not on either rule but on a plain documented fact. A successful status only means the call completed. The cold open's broken dashboard came from a perfectly successful call, so treating that status as proof of a usable answer is exactly the mistake being tested. What survives is the one that produces evidence, validate against the schema, branch on why the model stopped, and log the request ID so any call can be found again. Watch what those three do on the picture, because it's the whole reason this one wins. A clause for each place and nothing else on the list reaches all three. That's the pattern for every debugging item on this exam. The answer is rarely to make it fail less. It's usually to make the failure legible. Here's what the empty dashboard taught you, and it's one sentence. A failure sits in one of three places and only two of them leave a mark. Ask for a schema when something downstream has to read the answer and validate it anyway, because the guarantee is documented as most cases and not all. A streamed answer arrives as fragments, So accumulate first and parse once at the end. An error means the call didn't run and a successful response still carries the stop reason. So branch on that reason every time. Log the request ID and remember the libraries already retried the transient failures, so your own retry is usually hiding something. The counter moves to 32 of 53 and this one sat in 2 quarters. The stamp says survive. The ring closes CNC because output handling was its last piece. Tomorrow the desk is correct, trusted and busy and the first real invoice arrives on Priya's desk.